The letter trembled in Avalon Winter's hands as she read it for the third time, still unable to believe the words printed on the expensive cream stationery. "You've been sold," her stepmother Diane had announced moments earlier, sliding the envelope across the kitchen table with manicured fingernails. "Consider your debt to this family paid in full." 22 years old and betrayed by the only family she had known since age 12. The formal agreement was written in cold legal language, a contract transferring guardianship and personal services to one Thatcher Blackwood, billionaire recluse of Newport, Rhode Island, in exchange for the cancellation of her stepfather's gambling debts. "This can't be legal," Avalon whispered, her voice barely audible over the clattering of dishes as her stepmother loaded the dishwasher, acting as if she hadn't just destroyed someone's life. "You can't sell a person. It's not slavery, it's an employment contract," Diane replied without looking up. "One that you'll sign if you have any shred of gratitude for everything we've done for you. Richard's debts will destroy us otherwise." Avalon stared at the woman who had never shown her genuine affection since the day she'd married Avalon's father. After his death, staying with Diane and her new husband Richard had been her only option as a minor. Now they were cashing in on her existence one final time. "What exactly does he expect me to do?" Avalon asked, her throat tightening. Diane finally turned, her expression neutral but her eyes cold. "Be his companion. Make conversation. Attend events. He's supposedly brilliant, but desperately lonely since his fiancée left him. Richard says he's eccentric, keeps to himself. Honestly, it could be worse. Living in a mansion, wearing designer clothes, eating gourmet food. For how long? 3 years. Then the contract expires, and you're free as a bird with a hefty completion bonus. Think of it as a job with excellent benefits." Diane's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The car arrives tomorrow at noon. I suggest you pack." Later that night, as Avalon folded clothes into a suitcase, she researched Thatcher Blackwood online. At 34, he had built Blackwood Enterprises into a technology empire worth billions after inheriting his parents' modest software company. There were few photos. In most, he looked severe in tailored suits, his dark hair perfectly styled, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. The articles described him as intensely private, ruthlessly efficient, and emotionally detached. But it was the tragedy in his past that made Avalon pause. When he was 12, his parents had died in a house fire while he was away at boarding school. He'd returned to no family, inherited a struggling company, and had been alone ever since. Alone just like her. The sleek black car arrived precisely at noon the next day. The driver, a man named Marcus with military posture and respectful demeanor, helped load her modest luggage into the trunk of the Bentley. "How long is the drive?" Avalon asked as they pulled away from the suburban Philadelphia home she would not miss. "About 5 hours, Miss Winters. Mr. Blackwood is expecting you for dinner." Avalon watched the familiar landscape disappear, replaced by highways that carried her farther from the life she knew. Her phone buzzed with a bank notification. A deposit of $50,000 had just cleared in an account she hadn't known existed. "What's this money?" she asked Marcus, showing him the screen. "Your personal account, miss. Mr. Blackwood believes everyone should have financial independence." Independence. The word felt like a cruel joke as the car sped toward Rhode Island and a man who had purchased her presence in his life. The imposing gates of the Blackwood estate parted as they approached, revealing a sprawling property overlooking the Atlantic. The mansion was a modern architectural marvel of glass, stone, and steel that somehow complemented rather than clashed with the natural cliffside setting. Marcus drove past manicured gardens and a fountain courtyard before stopping at the main entrance. "Welcome to Blackwood Manor, Miss Winters." A tall woman in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair opened the massive front door before Avalon had even reached it. "I'm Elaine Mercer, the house manager," she said, her expression kind but professional. "Mr. Blackwood is in his study. He asked that you be shown to your suite to refresh after your journey. Dinner is at 7. The suite was larger than the entire second floor of her step-parents' house, a sitting room, bedroom, walk-in closet, and bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking ocean view. "Your new wardrobe arrived yesterday," Elaine explained, opening the closet to reveal designer clothes with tags still attached. "If anything doesn't fit or isn't to your taste, we'll have it replaced." My new wardrobe. Avalon echoed, running her fingers over silk and cashmere garments worth more than everything she'd ever owned. Mr. Blackwood believes presentation is important. Elaine's tone revealed nothing of her personal thoughts about the arrangement. Dinner is formal. I'll return at 6:45 to escort you downstairs. Alone, Avalon sank onto the edge of the bed, gazing at her reflection in the vanity mirror across the room. She hardly recognized herself, a young woman with haunted eyes and tension in every line of her body. This was her cage, no matter how gilded. She had been purchased, and somewhere in this massive house, the man who now owned her time and presence was waiting to inspect his acquisition. At precisely 6:45, Elaine knocked and escorted Avalon downstairs. They walked through corridors displaying museum-quality art before stopping at a set of double doors. A word of advice, Elaine said quietly. Mr. Blackwood values honesty above all else. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. The doors opened to reveal a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20, though only 2 places were set. At the head stood Thatcher Blackwood, taller than Avalon had expected, his presence commanding even in the vast space. Miss Winters, he said, his voice deep and controlled. Welcome to your new home. His eyes, a startling shade of blue-gray, assessed her with detached curiosity, as if she were a particularly interesting specimen under a microscope. And Avalon knew, meeting that cold gaze, that surviving the next 3 years would require every ounce of strength she possessed. The dining room's silence felt tangible as Avalon faced Thatcher Blackwood across the polished mahogany table. Crystal glassware caught the light from the chandelier overhead, creating prism-like reflections on the walls. Please sit. Thatcher gestured to the chair at his right. His movements were precise, economical, nothing wasted. Avalon moved forward, acutely aware of the soft rustle of the navy blue dress she'd selected from her new wardrobe. As she settled into the chair, uniformed staff appeared as if conjured, serving the first course without a word. I assume you've read the contract thoroughly, Thatcher said, his gaze clinical as he studied her. Do you have questions? Avalon swallowed hard. What exactly am I expected to do? Accompany me to business functions when required. Make conversation. Create the impression of normalcy. His mouth curved slightly, though the expression couldn't be called a smile. The world expects certain things from men in my position. Having a companion simplifies matters. A companion, Avalon repeated carefully. Not a girlfriend, or... She couldn't finish the thought. Thatcher's expression hardened. I don't purchase intimacy, Miss Winters. Your virtue, should you still possess it, is not part of our arrangement. Heat rushed to Avalon's face. Then why me? You could hire a professional escort for events. Because you need this arrangement as much as I do. He sipped his wine. Your stepfather's gambling debts would have resulted in your eviction within months. Your university education was interrupted due to lack of funds. You have no career prospects at present. The facts of her life laid bare, clinical and cold. I'm offering you stability, financial security, and a future. Avalon stared at the perfectly prepared food she couldn't taste. How do you know so much about me? I don't enter into contracts without due diligence. Thatcher set down his glass. Your daily responsibilities will be minimal. You'll have freedom to use the grounds, library, and other facilities. Continue your education online if you wish. I'll cover the costs. When I need you to attend functions, Elaine will inform you with adequate notice. And if I refuse to attend an event, something dangerous flickered in his eyes. The contract includes a compliance clause. Willful breach results in termination without compensation and immediate removal from the property. Your stepfather's debts would revert to their original status, with interest. The threat hung in the air between them. Avalon fought to maintain her composure. Do we have an understanding, Miss Winters? Thatcher asked. Yes, she managed, hating how small her voice sounded. And please call me Avalon. No. Formality maintains appropriate boundaries. He stood abruptly. I have work to complete. Elaine will give you a tour tomorrow. Good night, Miss Winters. After he left, Avalon remained at the table, forcing herself to eat despite her lack of appetite. When she finally returned to her suite, she found Elaine arranging flowers on a side table. How was dinner? The older woman asked, her tone neutral. Illuminating, Avalon replied, sinking into an armchair. How long have you worked for Mr. Blackwood? 22 years. Since he was 12. Elaine's expression softened. Since the fire. You know him well, then. I know the version of himself he allows people to see. Elaine busied herself adjusting the flowers. He wasn't always this way. What changed him? Loss changes everyone, Miss Winters. Elaine moved toward the door. Breakfast is served from 7 to 9. The tour begins at 10. Alone again, Avalon opened the French doors to her private balcony. The night air carried the scent of salt from the ocean below. The vastness of the Atlantic stretched before her, dark and mysterious. Just like her future. The morning tour revealed Blackwood Manor to be even more impressive than it had appeared on arrival. Built into the cliffside, the structure incorporated the natural landscape with walls of glass offering panoramic ocean views. Modern architecture blended with old-world craftsmanship. The sleek surfaces complemented by warm woods and natural stone. The East Wing contains Mr. Blackwood's private quarters and offices. Those areas are restricted, Elaine explained as they walked through a light-filled corridor lined with contemporary art. The West Wing, where your suite is located, houses guest accommodations and recreation facilities. Those facilities proved extensive. An indoor pool with retractable ceiling, a fitness center with equipment that looked straight from the future, a movie theater, and a library with thousands of volumes. Does anyone else live here? Avalon asked, overwhelmed by the scale of the place. Marcus and his wife have quarters above the garage. The chef and housekeeper have separate cottages on the grounds. The rest of the staff commute daily. Elaine paused before a set of doors. This is the music room. Mr. Blackwood rarely uses it, but you're welcome to. Inside, Avalon gasped at the sight of a gleaming grand piano positioned before floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the cliffs. You play? Elaine asked, noting her reaction. I used to, before my father died. Avalon approached the instrument reverently. I haven't touched a piano in years. Perhaps you'll find time to practice again. Elaine's tone held something like approval. Later that day, exploring on her own, Avalon discovered a hidden garden tucked into a sheltered corner of the property. Stone walls created a sanctuary filled with climbing roses and fragrant herbs. A wrought iron bench sat beneath an ancient oak tree, offering shade and privacy. It was there, a week later, that Elaine found her reading a novel from the library. Mr. Blackwood requires your presence this evening, she announced without preamble. There's a charity gala in Providence. The car leaves at 7. Avalon's stomach tightened. Her first public appearance as Thatcher Blackwood's companion had arrived. Returning to her suite, she found a garment bag laid across her bed. Inside was an emerald green gown that looked impossibly expensive, with matching shoes and a small velvet box containing teardrop emerald earrings. When she emerged at precisely 7, Thatcher was waiting in the foyer, imposing in a tailored tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean build. His expression remained impassive as he assessed her appearance. Acceptable, he said finally, the word somehow more insulting than any criticism. The drive to Providence passed in tense silence. Only as they approached the venue did Thatcher speak again. You'll be asked questions about our relationship, he said, checking his watch. We met through mutual acquaintances. You're staying at my Newport property while pursuing your education. Keep it vague, but plausible. So I'm to lie, Avalon stated, not a question. You're to be discreet. His tone brooked no argument. Remember why you're here. The ballroom of the historic hotel glittered with wealth and privilege. Avalon felt eyes tracking their entrance, noted the whispers behind jeweled hands. Thatcher's hand at the small of her back guided her through the crowd, his touch impersonal but proprietary. Thatcher Blackwood. A voice called, and they turned to face a striking woman with platinum blonde hair and a calculating smile. What a surprise to see you at a social function. Vanessa, Thatcher acknowledged coolly. I wasn't aware you'd be here. The woman's gaze shifted to Avalon, assessing and dismissive in an instant. And who is your lovely companion? Before Thatcher could respond, Avalon extended her hand. Avalon Winters. And you are? Vanessa Sinclair. I'm surprised Thatcher hasn't mentioned me. Her smile turned predatory. I'm his former fiancé and current vice president of strategic development at Blackwood Enterprises. Avalon felt Thatcher's body tense beside her. How interesting, she managed, maintaining her smile. Mr. Blackwood and I have so many more important things to discuss than past relationships. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Of course you do. I look forward to learning more about you, Avalon. Perhaps over lunch next week? I'm sure we have much to share. As the woman sauntered away, Thatcher's grip on Avalon's elbow tightened. Well done, he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. But be careful. Vanessa's interest is never benign. Avalon looked up at him, seeing something new in his expression, a wariness, perhaps even vulnerability. Who is she to you, really? A mistake, he replied, his voice hard. One I don't intend to repeat. 2 weeks passed at Blackwood Manor, each day settling into a routine that gave Avalon the illusion of normalcy. Mornings were spent in the library pursuing online courses Thatcher had arranged without consultation. Business administration and finance, subjects she hadn't chosen but didn't object to. Afternoons were her own, usually in the music room where her fingers slowly remembered the piano, coaxing melodies from the magnificent instrument. Thatcher remained a phantom presence in his own home. She glimpsed him occasionally, striding through corridors on phone calls, working in the garden pavilion with a laptop, or standing at the cliff's edge staring at the horizon as if searching for answers in the distance. They shared dinner twice weekly, conversations limited to polite inquiries about her studies and perfunctory business anecdotes. Today, however, broke the pattern. A summer storm had rolled in from the Atlantic, trapping them both inside as thunder shook the windows and lightning split the darkened sky. Avalon was in the library, curled in a window seat watching nature's fury, when the door opened and Thatcher entered. He faltered momentarily upon seeing her. I apologize for the intrusion, he said stiffly. I needed reference materials. It's your library, Avalon replied, marking her place in her book. You don't need permission to enter rooms in your own house. Something like amusement flickered across his face before disappearing. Nevertheless, I respect others' privacy. Avalon watched as he scanned shelves, selecting several volumes on international finance. The storm chose that moment to intensify. A particularly violent thunderclap followed immediately by a flash that plunged the room into darkness. Generators should engage momentarily, Thatcher said calmly from somewhere in the darkness. When the emergency lights activated seconds later, Avalon found herself gripping the window frame, heart racing. Across the room, Thatcher stood completely still, his face drained of color. Are you all right? She asked. Fine. The word came out harsh, just startled. But Avalon recognized the lie. In the dim light, with his defenses momentarily lowered, Thatcher Blackwood looked like a frightened child. You're afraid of storms, she said softly, not a question. His posture stiffened. Don't be ridiculous. I used to be terrified of them, Avalon continued, ignoring his denial. My father would sit with me during bad ones, telling stories until I forgot to be scared. Thatcher remained silent, but he hadn't moved toward the door. The night of the fire, she said carefully. Was there a storm? The books slipped from his grasp, thudding against the carpet. How did you? I didn't know. I guessed. Avalon stood slowly, approaching him like one might a wounded animal. Elaine mentioned a fire when you were 12. Your reaction to the storm suggested a connection. Thatcher's breathing had accelerated, his normally controlled demeanor cracking. You should leave. So should you, she countered. This room has too many windows for someone who doesn't like storms. Another lightning flash illuminated his face, confusion replacing anger at her lack of retreat. The kitchen has no windows, Avalon suggested. And I missed lunch. It was the practical nature of her suggestion, perhaps, that allowed him to accept it. They made their way through shadowed hallways to the massive professional kitchen, where emergency lighting created islands of visibility amid darkness. Does the staff stay during storms? Avalon asked, opening the refrigerator. They have the option to leave before severe weather, Thatcher replied, his voice steadier now. Most depart. Avalon assembled sandwich ingredients. Even Elaine? Elaine never leaves. Something in his tone suggested deeper meaning. She was my parents' housekeeper before. Before the fire, Avalon finished, sliding a plate toward him. You don't have to talk about it. Thatcher stared at the sandwich as if it were a foreign object. I haven't made my own meal in decades. You're not making it. I am. Avalon began constructing her own. Consider it part of my contractual duties. The absurdity of their situation, billionaire and captive companion making sandwiches in a darkened kitchen during a power outage, seemed to penetrate Thatcher's armor. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. It was a thunderstorm, he said suddenly, eyes fixed on his plate. The night of the fire. I was at boarding school when it happened. The headmaster woke me at 3 a.m. Avalon remained silent, recognizing the rarity of this confidence. The fire investigators said lightning struck the east wing. My parents' bedroom. His voice dropped. They were trapped. The staff tried to reach them, but the staircase collapsed. I'm so sorry, Avalon whispered. I wasn't there. Thatcher continued, as if he hadn't heard her. I should have been home for the weekend, but I'd gotten into trouble at school. My father canceled my visit as punishment. His hand clenched. If I'd been there, you might have died too, Avalon finished gently. His eyes met hers, filled with a pain so raw it stole her breath. Some days, that outcome seems preferable. The confession hung between them in the dim kitchen. Avalon, moved by an instinct she couldn't name, reached across the counter and placed her hand atop his clenched fist. My father died of cancer when I was 12, she said quietly. For years, I was angry at him for leaving me with my stepmother. As if he'd chosen to die, chosen to abandon me. Thatcher didn't pull away from her touch. When did you stop being angry? Who says I have? She offered a sad smile. But I've learned there's room for other feelings alongside the anger. Grief doesn't expire, Mr. Blackwood. It just transforms. Thatcher, he said unexpectedly. When we're alone, you may call me Thatcher. The concession felt monumental. Before Avalon could respond, the main lights flickered on, breaking the strange intimacy of the moment. Thatcher withdrew his hand, composure returning like a mask sliding into place. Powers restored. I have calls to make. He was gone before she could respond, leaving his untouched sandwich behind. The next morning, Avalon found a small package outside her door, a state-of-the-art noise-canceling headphone set with a note in precise handwriting, for future storms. That evening, a knock on her suite door revealed Elaine, her usual professional demeanor firmly in place. Mr. Blackwood requests your presence in his study, she announced. The study, part of the restricted East Wing, proved to be a 2-story room with walls of books and a massive desk overlooking the ocean. Thatcher stood at the windows, backlit by the setting sun. You wish to see me? Avalon asked, hesitating at the threshold. Yes. He turned, expression unreadable. I need you to attend a business dinner tomorrow evening. The CEO of Hammond Technologies and his wife. They're potential acquisition partners. Of course. Avalon nodded, disappointed that he'd reverted to their purely transactional relationship after yesterday's connection. The event also includes a symphony performance. Elaine mentioned you play piano. Avalon tensed. I used to. I'm out of practice. Nevertheless, you understand music. He returned to his desk, shuffling papers dismissively. That's all, Miss Winters. The abrupt dismissal stung more than it should have. Avalon turned to leave, then paused. Thatcher. He looked up, surprised at her use of his name. Thank you for the headphones. She met his gaze directly. And for yesterday, something unidentifiable flickered across his face. You're welcome, Avalon. It was the first time he'd spoken her name. The sound of it in his deep voice lingered in her mind long after she'd returned to her suite. The following evening, as they prepared to leave for Providence, Avalon descended the grand staircase in a champagne-colored gown that made her feel like she belonged in another century. Thatcher waited below, his appreciative glance quickly masked by his usual reserve. You look appropriate, he said, the inadequate compliment clearly all he could manage. As do you, she replied, noting how his custom tuxedo emphasized his athletic build. The drive to Providence was less tense than before, a careful truce established between them. The Hammonds are old money, Thatcher explained. Conservative, traditional. They value family connections and loyalty. Hence bringing your companion, Avalon deduced. Precisely. Gerald Hammond won't do business with unmarried men. He considers them unstable. That's ridiculously outdated. I don't need his social approval, just his company. Thatcher checked his phone. One evening of pretense is worth the potential acquisition. Avalon stared out the window. So, I'm just a prop in your business strategy. No. Thatcher's response came quickly. He paused, seeming to search for words. You're more complex than I initially assessed. Before she could decipher this cryptic statement, they arrived at the venue, a historic theater where dinner would precede the symphony performance. The Hammonds proved to be exactly as Thatcher had described. Gerald pompous and patrician, his wife Beatrice quietly observant beneath her social graces. Throughout dinner, Avalon felt Beatrice's gaze assessing her relationship with Thatcher, searching for authenticity. "How did you two meet?" Beatrice asked during the second course. Thatcher's been notoriously private since his broken engagement. Beside her, Thatcher tensed imperceptibly. "Through mutual connections," Avalon replied smoothly. "Though I suspect fate played a hand. We both lost parents at 12. It creates a particular perspective on life." Thatcher's startled glance revealed her deviation from script, but the genuine detail achieved what fabrication couldn't. Beatrice softened visibly. "Indeed it does," the older woman agreed. "Gerald and I married young after both losing our mothers. Shared grief creates powerful bonds." Gerald Hammond, previously focused on business talk with Thatcher, gave Avalon a more appraising look. "Do you share Thatcher's business interests as well, Miss Winters?" "I'm more interested in the human elements of business," Avalon replied carefully. "The relationships and trust that make partnerships work, rather than just the financial aspects." Refreshing perspective, Gerald nodded approvingly. Too many young people focus solely on profit margins. As conversation continued, Avalon felt Thatcher's hand settle briefly against her lower back, not guiding or controlling as before, but communicating silent gratitude. Later, as the symphony began, Avalon lost herself in the music, eyes closed as she absorbed Rachmaninoff's complex emotions conveyed through notes. Beside her, Thatcher watched not the stage, but her face, captivated by her unguarded response to the performance. When they returned to the mansion past midnight, a strange tension hummed between them. At the top of the grand staircase where their paths would diverge, her to the west wing, him to the east, Thatcher hesitated. "Thank you," he said finally. "The Hammonds have agreed to preliminary acquisition talks." "You're welcome," Avalon replied, suddenly exhausted by the pretense. "That's what you're paying for, after all." Thatcher frowned. "That's not. Good night, Mr. Blackwood," she interrupted, deliberately formal again, and turned toward her suite. Behind her, she heard him exhale sharply, followed by a soft, defeated, "Good night, Avalon." The headquarters of Blackwood Enterprises occupied a sleek skyscraper in downtown Providence. Vanessa Sinclair's corner office on the 38th floor offered panoramic views of the city, but her attention was fixed on the tablet in her hand, a security feed showing Thatcher and Avalon returning from the Hammond dinner the previous night. "Interesting," she murmured, studying their body language as they ascended the mansion's grand staircase. The slight hesitation, the tension evident even through grainy surveillance footage. A knock at her door preceded her assistant's entrance. "The quarterly reports you requested, Miss Sinclair." "Thank you, Parker." She accepted the folder without looking up. "Any update on the background check?" "Yes, ma'am. Avalon Winters, 22, orphaned at 12 when her father died of cancer. Mother's whereabouts unknown. She abandoned the family when Avalon was 3. Lived with stepmother Diane and her second husband Richard until 2 months ago. Above average student, scholarship to Rhode Island School of Design for piano performance. Dropped out after financial aid was cut. Piano." Vanessa's perfectly manicured fingernail tapped against her desk. "Thatcher's mother was a concert pianist." "There's more," Parker continued. "The transfer of funds from Mr. Blackwood to Richard Collins happened the day before Miss Winters moved in. $5 million. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "He bought her." "It appears so. The stepfather had significant gambling debts. Find out everything about her. Friends, exes, school records, medical history. I need leverage." Vanessa dismissed him with a wave. "And give me full access to the security system at the Newport property." Alone again, she opened her desk drawer and removed a framed photo. Herself and Thatcher at a charity gala 3 years earlier, when their engagement had been the talk of Providence society. Before he had discovered her accessing confidential company files and broken things off, she traced his face in the image. "You think you found someone pure and unspoiled, don't you? Someone who doesn't care about your money." Her nail dug into the glass over Thatcher's face. "We'll see about that." At Blackwood Manor, Avalon immersed herself in practice, fingers flying over the piano keys as she played Chopin's revolutionary etude with an intensity that matched her confused emotions. 2 months into her employment, the boundaries of her arrangement with Thatcher had begun to blur. Since the night of the storm and the successful Hammond dinner, something had shifted. Thatcher sought her company more frequently, casual inquiries about her studies, invitations to walk the grounds, even bringing business documents to review in the library while she read nearby. Last night he had appeared at the music room doorway, silently listening to her play before joining her on the bench, their shoulders nearly touching as he revealed his mother had been a pianist. She would practice for hours, he'd said softly. This was her favorite. His fingers had brushed the keys, playing the opening notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune. The memory of their proximity made Avalon stumble over a passage. She stopped, frustrated, as her phone chimed with a message. Unknown, lunch tomorrow? I'd love to hear how you're settling in. Vanessa Sinclair. Avalon stared at the screen, wondering how the woman had obtained her number. Before she could decide how to respond, Elaine appeared in the doorway. Mr. Blackwood asks if you'd join him in his study. Thatcher was reviewing contracts when she entered, but set them aside immediately. I've been invited to a technology summit in Boston next weekend. 3 days, prominent industry leaders. I'd like you to accompany me. Of course. Avalon hesitated, then added, Vanessa Sinclair texted me. She wants to have lunch. Thatcher's expression darkened. Decline. Why? What happened between you two? That's not relevant to our arrangement. It is if she's trying to use me to get to you. Avalon crossed her arms. I should know what I'm walking into. Thatcher was silent for a long moment. We were engaged. I ended it when I discovered she had accessed confidential company files and leaked information to competitors. She was spying on you? On the company. The distinction matters. He stood, moving to the windows. Vanessa is brilliant and ruthless. After we broke up, the board insisted on keeping her as VP of Strategic Development. Her connections are too valuable to lose. You let someone who betrayed you keep a leadership position in your company? Business isn't personal, he replied, though his tense posture suggested otherwise. Everything is personal, Avalon countered. Especially betrayal. Thatcher turned, studying her with that penetrating gaze. Your stepmother sold you to pay gambling debts. Yet you don't seem consumed by hatred. I save my energy for building a future, not nurturing grudges. She met his gaze. But I'm not naive. I'll decline Vanessa's invitation. No, he said unexpectedly. Accept it. Find out what she wants. You're using me as bait? I'm asking you to be observant. His expression softened slightly. You're intuitive about people. I trust your judgment. The admission surprised them both. Avalon nodded slowly. All right, I'll have lunch with her. 2 days later, Avalon sat across from Vanessa at an exclusive downtown restaurant, acutely aware of the other woman's calculating assessment behind her friendly smile. You must find the mansion isolating, Vanessa commented, sipping champagne. Thatcher prefers keeping his possessions under lock and key. I'm not a possession, Avalon replied evenly. No. Vanessa's smile turned predatory. $5 million says otherwise. Avalon felt the blood drain from her face. You don't know what you're talking about. Your stepfather's gambling debts, paid in full the day before you moved in? Let's not pretend this is a love match. Vanessa leaned forward. I'm not judging. We all do what's necessary to survive. What do you want, Miss Sinclair? To offer you an opportunity. Thatcher can be difficult. When our relationship ended, I was shut out completely. But there are projects I initiated that I still care about. Vanessa withdrew a flash drive from her purse. I need information only accessible from his private server. Nothing that would harm the company, just updates on my previous work. You're asking me to spy on him. I'm asking you to retrieve information that rightfully belongs to me. Vanessa pushed the drive across the table. Consider it insurance. If things go south with Thatcher, you'll want an ally. Avalon left the flash drive on the table. I'm not interested. Think carefully. Vanessa called as Avalon stood to leave. Do you really believe you're anything more to him than a temporary distraction? Avalon stood at the French doors of her suite, watching storm clouds gather over the Atlantic. 3 days had passed since her unsettling lunch with Vanessa, and she had yet to tell Thatcher about the conversation. She'd convinced herself she needed time to process the information, but truthfully, doubt had taken root. $5 million. The sum was staggering, far more than Richard's gambling debts could have warranted. What exactly had Thatcher purchased? A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Mr. Blackwood requests your presence in his study immediately, Elaine announced, her usual composure noticeably strained. Is something wrong? It's not my place to say. Elaine's averted gaze spoke volumes. The walk to Thatcher's study felt interminable. When Avalon entered, she found him standing behind his desk, his posture rigid, expression thunderous. "Close the door," he ordered. Avalon complied, heart racing. "What's happened?" Thatcher tossed a folder onto the desk surface. "The Hammond acquisition has fallen through. Somehow, our competitors obtained our confidential valuation metrics and underbid us by precisely 2%. I don't understand what. Only 5 people had access to those figures." Thatcher's voice was dangerously controlled. 3 of them were in meetings when the information was transferred. Vanessa was in New York. His eyes locked with hers. "And you had lunch with her last week." The accusation hung between them, monstrous and unexpected. "You think I leaked confidential information?" Avalon whispered. "Did you?" His face was a mask of cold fury. "No, I would never. Your stepfather's debts were paid 2 months ago. Your obligation to me could easily be outweighed by whatever Vanessa offered." He circled the desk, approaching her. "What did she promise you? Money? Career opportunities? Revenge against the man who purchased your company?" Each word struck like a physical blow. Avalon stepped backward. "I didn't betray you." "Then explain this." Thatcher thrust a tablet toward her, displaying security footage of her lunch with Vanessa. The angle clearly showed Vanessa sliding something across the table, the flash drive. "She offered me that drive to install on your private server. I refused." Avalon's voice trembled. "I left it on the table. The footage shows you picking it up." "What?" Avalon grabbed the tablet, rewinding. Indeed, the final frames showed her hand reaching toward the drive. "That's been altered. I never touched it. Your financial status changed overnight from destitute student to wealthy companion. Did you think a second betrayal would bother your conscience?" Thatcher's voice was ice. "I had thought you different. I was mistaken." "Thatcher, please." "Mr. Blackwood," he corrected savagely. "I want you gone by morning." "You're terminating our contract?" Panic rose in Avalon's throat. "What about? Your stepfather's debts are settled. That payment stands." He turned away. "Leave the property by 9 tomorrow. Any belongings you can't take immediately will be shipped." "I didn't do this." Avalon fought to maintain composure. "I would never betray your trust." "Trust?" Thatcher laughed bitterly. "This was never about trust, Miss Winters. It was a business arrangement, one that has concluded unsatisfactorily." Avalon felt something break inside her. Not just disappointment at his lack of faith, but genuine grief for the connection she'd thought they were building. "If you believe I'm capable of this," she said quietly, "then you never knew me at all." She left without waiting for his response, tears blurring her vision as she hurried through corridors that had almost begun to feel like home. In her suite, she threw possessions haphazardly into a suitcase, her mind racing. The footage had been altered, that much was certain. But why would Vanessa frame her so elaborately? A crash of thunder shook the windows as rain began lashing against the glass. The approaching storm matched Avalon's inner turmoil. She couldn't stay, not after seeing the cold contempt in Thatcher's eyes. But she couldn't leave without understanding what had happened. Wiping tears from her cheeks, Avalon made a decision. She needed to find evidence clearing her name. Thatcher might never see it, might never believe her, but she would know the truth. The mansion's security system had cameras everywhere. If she could access the original footage of her lunch with Vanessa, perhaps she could prove the manipulation. But such files would be on Thatcher's private server, in his restricted wing. Lightning flashed, followed immediately by thunder that rattled the windows. The storm had arrived in full force, giving Avalon unexpected cover. During severe weather, security focused on protecting the property from damage, not monitoring internal movements. Taking only her phone and the keycard that granted her limited access to the house, Avalon slipped from her suite. The emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as she navigated toward the east wing. Rain pounded against the windows, wind howling around the mansion's corners. She had nearly reached Thatcher's office when a sound stopped her. Voices, heated in argument. Flattening herself against a wall, she listened. "Don't care what evidence you think you have." Thatcher's voice, taut with controlled rage. "The footage is conclusive." An unfamiliar male voice. "She accessed confidential files through your private terminal 2 days ago." "Impossible. She doesn't have the credentials or the access." "The system logs don't lie, sir. And with her history, orphaned, abandoned by her mother, financially desperate, She's the perfect recruit for corporate espionage. Avalon's blood ran cold. The accusations were multiplying, evidence apparently mounting against her. She needed to get away, to think clearly without the suffocating weight of Thatcher's anger and distrust. Lightning struck terrifyingly close, the subsequent thunder immediate and deafening. The mansion's lights flickered, then failed completely. In the momentary darkness, Avalon ran. Through rain-lashed gardens, across sodden lawns, toward the service gate that would lead to the road. Behind her, she heard shouts. They'd discovered her absence. Rain soaked her to the skin within seconds, the storm's fury matching her desperation. As she reached the gate, headlights appeared on the private road, security coming to check perimeter alarms triggered by the storm. Avalon veered into the dense woods bordering the property, seeking escape from both the manhunt surely beginning at the mansion and the crushing knowledge that Thatcher had thought her capable of such profound betrayal. She had trusted him, had begun to care for him, had imagined, foolishly, that he might care for her too. Now she was alone again, fleeing into darkness, with nothing but determination to clear her name and the bitter taste of unjust accusation burning in her throat. The motel room on the outskirts of Newport was a far cry from the luxury of Blackwood Manor. Paint peeled from water-stained walls, and the mattress sagged in the middle. But Avalon had paid cash, and the clerk hadn't asked questions. Exactly what she needed. 3 days had passed since her flight from the mansion. 3 days of looking over her shoulder, expecting Thatcher's security team to appear at any moment. Though she had no evidence, she was certain Vanessa Sinclair was behind the elaborate frame job. The question was why. Avalon opened her laptop, purchased secondhand with some of the emergency cash she'd withdrawn before closing the account Thatcher had established for her. She couldn't risk using her phone or credit cards that might be traced. The hurricane had moved northward, leaving behind flooded streets and power outages across Rhode Island. Local news reported Blackwood Enterprises had donated $5 million for relief efforts, the same amount Thatcher had paid to purchase her. The coincidence felt pointed, as if he were erasing any financial connection between them. A knock at the door sent her heart racing. Grabbing her pepper spray, she approached cautiously. "Who is it?" "Elaine Mercer," came the reply. "I'm alone." Avalon opened the door a crack, chain still engaged. Thatcher's house manager stood in the dim hallway, looking terribly out of place in her tailored slacks and cashmere sweater. "How did you find me?" "I've managed Thatcher's household for 22 years. I have resources." Elaine's expression softened. "May I come in? It's important." Once inside, Elaine surveyed the shabby room with pursed lips. "You shouldn't be here." "I had limited options after being accused of corporate espionage and thrown out during a hurricane," Avalon replied, arms crossed defensively. "That's why I've come. Things aren't what they seem." Elaine reached into her bag, producing a small velvet pouch. "This was found in the garden pavilion yesterday. The groundskeeper brought it to me." Avalon accepted the pouch, emptying its contents into her palm. A platinum bracelet set with sapphires, clearly antique and valuable. "I don't understand. This isn't mine. It belonged to Elizabeth Blackwood, Thatcher's mother." Elaine's gaze was steady. "It disappeared the night of the fire, presumed destroyed. It's been missing for 22 years. Avalon carefully returned the bracelet to the pouch. "Why bring it to me?" "Because its reappearance now, in the midst of everything else, cannot be coincidence." Elaine lowered her voice. "The night you left, Marcus discovered surveillance equipment in your suite. Cameras and listening devices not part of the mansion's security system. Someone was spying on me." Avalon felt violated. "Vanessa? Perhaps. But installing that equipment would require physical access to the property, and Ms. Sinclair hasn't visited the mansion in over a year." "An accomplice, then?" Avalon paced the small room. "Elaine, Thatcher believes I sold company secrets. There was video evidence of me taking a flash drive from Vanessa, but it was altered. I never touched it." "I believe you." Elaine's simple declaration nearly brought tears to Avalon's eyes. "Thatcher is complicated. Trust doesn't come easily to him. After his parents died, there were questions about the fire, inconsistencies in the investigation. Then Vanessa's betrayal reinforced his worst instincts." "What inconsistencies about the fire?" "The lightning strike that supposedly caused it hit the west wing, not the east where his parents' bedroom was located. And their bedroom door was locked from the outside." Avalon stared at the older woman. You're saying it wasn't an accident? I've never had proof. Elaine glanced at the bracelet. Until perhaps now. Avalon examined the bracelet more carefully. Something about the clasp caught her attention. It was thicker than necessary, with a small, nearly invisible seam. There's something inside this, she murmured, working at the clasp until it sprung open, revealing a hidden compartment containing a tightly folded piece of paper. With trembling fingers, she extracted and unfolded it. A note written in elegant script. If you're reading this, they've found me. The Helix Group knows about the encryption algorithm. Trust no one connected to the company. The fire wasn't the end of their planned EB. Avalon read it twice before looking up at Elaine. What's the Helix Group? I don't know. But Elizabeth was developing encryption software before she died. Thatcher built Blackwood Enterprises on that foundation. We need to show this to Thatcher immediately. He won't see you, Elaine said gently. He's convinced of your guilt, and he's in Boston for the technology summit. With Vanessa? Yes. The board insisted she attend. Most of senior management is there. Avalon fell silent, mind racing. If Vanessa had framed her, it was for a purpose beyond simple revenge. The summit would gather industry leaders in one location, the perfect opportunity for whatever she was planning. I need to get to Boston, Avalon decided. Today, what will you do? Find proof of Vanessa's involvement in whatever she's planning. Avalon carefully rewrapped the bracelet. This suggests the circumstances of Thatcher's parents' deaths weren't what they seemed. What if the same people are behind this current situation? Elaine hesitated, then reached into her purse for a keycard and a cell phone. The card will get you into Thatcher's private office at Blackwood Enterprises. The phone is untraceable. And this, she produced an envelope containing cash, should cover expenses. Why are you helping me? I promised Elizabeth I would always protect her son. Elaine's eyes held decades of unspoken loyalty. Sometimes protection means saving him from his own worst instincts. After Elaine departed, Avalon opened her laptop again, this time accessing the Blackwood Enterprises website. The Technology Summit would begin tomorrow evening with a reception at Boston's Grand Meridian Hotel. If Vanessa was planning something there, Avalon needed to discover what and stop it. Her own vindication was secondary now to protecting Thatcher, whether he believed in her innocence or not. As she packed her meager belongings, her gaze fell on the bracelet. Elizabeth Blackwood had hidden that message knowing her life was in danger. After 22 years, it had surfaced just as her son faced a new threat. Some might call it coincidence. Avalon chose to see it as something more, a mother's determination to protect her child reaching across time itself. With renewed resolve, she headed for Providence, where answers awaited in the heart of Blackwood Enterprises. The Boston skyline glittered in the night, skyscrapers illuminated against the dark sky as Avalon made her way through the crowded lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel. The Technology Summit's opening reception was in full swing, industry elites mingling in a grand ballroom that dripped with luxury. Getting here had been a calculated risk. After infiltrating Blackwood Enterprises headquarters using Elaine's keycard, Avalon had discovered alarming information on Thatcher's private server, financial records showing systematic siphoning of company funds to offshore accounts, all seemingly authorized with Thatcher's digital signature. Someone was methodically draining the company while simultaneously preparing evidence that would implicate Thatcher in embezzlement and fraud. More disturbing still was what she found on Vanessa's corporate laptop, a detailed dossier on the Blackwood acquisition, not by Blackwood Enterprises, but of it. Emails between Vanessa and someone identified only as H outlined a plan to devalue the company before a hostile takeover by the Helix Group, the same organization mentioned in Elizabeth Blackwood's hidden note. Now, dressed in an elegant black gown purchased with Elaine's money and wearing a hotel staff ID badge she'd forged, Avalon circulated the room with a tray of champagne flutes, searching for Thatcher among the crowd. She spotted Vanessa first, resplendent in crimson, laughing with a cluster of executives near the bar. Then, across the room, Thatcher appeared, looking exhausted but impeccable in a tuxedo as he spoke with an older man Avalon recognized from news photos as Senator Harrington, a key figure on the Technology Oversight Committee. Her heart constricted at the sight of him. Even believing the worst of her, he still commanded her emotions in ways she couldn't control. A commotion near the entrance drew attention, several security personnel moving purposefully through the crowd. One spoke into a radio, his gaze scanning faces. They were looking for someone. For her. Abandoning her tray on a table, Avalon slipped toward a service door, only to feel a hand grasp her elbow. "What are you doing here?" Thatcher's voice was low and dangerous, his fingers digging into her arm as he pulled her into an alcove behind a massive floral arrangement. "You're in danger," she replied, forcing herself to meet his cold gaze. "Vanessa is working with a group called Helix. They're planning to take over your company tonight." "More lies." His grip tightened. "Security is looking for you. Corporate espionage carries serious charges. If I wanted to run, I wouldn't be here." Avalon extracted the velvet pouch from her clutch. "This was found at the mansion. It belonged to your mother." Something flickered in Thatcher's eyes as he recognized the pouch. With reluctant curiosity, he released her to accept it. "Where did you get this?" "Elaine brought it to me." "Look inside the clasp." His fingers hesitated, then carefully opened the hidden compartment, extracting the note. As he read his mother's handwriting, color drained from his face. "This isn't possible," he whispered. "The Helix group killed your parents," Avalon said, her voice gentle despite the harshness of the truth. "And now they're using Vanessa to destroy you and take your company." Thatcher stared at the note, decades of certainty crumbling. "How do I know this isn't another manipulation? Blackwood Enterprises accounts are being systematically drained. Funds are being transferred to offshore accounts supposedly authorized by you. By tomorrow, the company will be financially vulnerable enough for a hostile takeover, and evidence will surface implicating you in fraud." Avalon withdrew a flash drive from her clutch. "All the proof is here." Before Thatcher could respond, a voice called his name. They both turned to see Vanessa approaching, her smile faltering as she recognized Avalon. "There you are, darling." Vanessa recovered smoothly. "The Japanese contingent has arrived." Her gaze hardened on Avalon. "I'm surprised to see staff resembling fugitives from justice." "She was just leaving," Thatcher replied, his tone unreadable as he pocketed both the bracelet and flash drive. Avalon felt her last hope evaporate. He still didn't believe her. "Security," Vanessa called, raising a hand to summon guards. "That won't be necessary," Thatcher interrupted. "I'll handle this personally." He gripped Avalon's arm again, steering her toward a side exit. "Miss Winters and I have unfinished business." In the deserted corridor outside the ballroom, Thatcher released her arm. "You have 5 minutes to explain everything. After that, I decide whether to call security." Relief coursed through Avalon. "Your mother was developing encryption technology before she died. The Helix group wanted it. They orchestrated the fire that killed your parents, made it look like an accident. Assumed, not proven," Thatcher countered, though doubt shadowed his eyes. "Vanessa discovered your mother's original research in company archives. She contacted Helix Group and offered them not just the encryption algorithm, but the entire company. She's been systematically sabotaging acquisitions, including Hammond, while setting you up to take the fall." "This is the truth," Avalon finished. "Check the flash drive. Tonight at midnight, the final transfers will leave Blackwood Enterprises insolvent. By morning, the SEC will receive anonymous evidence of your fraud. Helix Group, through shell companies, will purchase controlling interest in a fire sale." Thatcher studied her face, searching for deception. "Why would you risk coming here?" "Because I couldn't let them destroy you." The simple truth hung between them. "Whether you believe me or not." Before he could respond, the service door burst open. 2 men in security uniforms, but with the cold eyes of professionals far more dangerous than hotel staff, advanced on them. "Mr. Blackwood," one said, hand moving toward an inside pocket. "You're needed inside." Thatcher stepped in front of Avalon. "I'll be there momentarily." "Now, sir." The man's jacket parted enough to reveal a holstered weapon. "Run," Thatcher whispered, and shoved Avalon backward as he lunged at the first man. Chaos erupted in the narrow corridor. Avalon kicked off her heels and sprinted away, hearing grunts and the sound of blows behind her. At the corridor's end, she glanced back to see Thatcher overwhelmed, a cloth pressed to his face as he slumped unconscious between the 2 men. Heart pounding, Avalon ducked into a stairwell, mind racing. She had minutes at most before they came for her too. With Thatcher incapacitated, she needed help. Pulling out the phone Elaine had given her, she dialed. "Elaine? They've taken Thatcher." "Yes, I showed him the bracelet." He's starting to believe me. But now She broke off at a noise below. I think they're coming. Listen carefully. Blackwood Enterprises' system is set for automated transfers at midnight. Someone needs to lock down the accounts immediately. The password is in the flash drive I left in Thatcher's pocket. Find Marcus. Tell him what's happening. I'm going after Thatcher. Ending the call, Avalon removed her restrictive gown. Thankful for the fitted black slip she wore underneath that would allow her to move while still blending into shadows. She needed to find where they'd taken Thatcher before Vanessa and her Helix Group associates could eliminate the last obstacle to their plan. As she eased open the stairwell door, checking for pursuers, Avalon whispered a silent promise to the woman whose bracelet had finally revealed the truth after 22 years of darkness. I'll protect your son, Elizabeth, no matter what it costs. The service tunnels beneath the Grand Meridian Hotel formed a labyrinth of concrete and pipes, dimly lit and deserted at this late hour. Avalon moved silently through the shadows, following the faint sounds of voices echoing down a maintenance corridor. After witnessing Thatcher's abduction, she had retreated to the hotel's basement level, reasoning they wouldn't risk moving him off-site while the summit continued above. She'd been right. Through a partially open door at the corridor's end, she glimpsed a storage room converted to temporary use. Thatcher sat zip-tied to a chair, a trickle of blood running from his temple. Vanessa paced before him while two men, the same security personnel from upstairs, stood guard. The transfer protocols require your biometric authorization, Vanessa was saying, her elegant gown incongruous in the grim setting. Once the funds clear, you'll be found to have embezzled millions before taking your own life. Tragic, but not entirely surprising given your family history of mental instability. My parents weren't mentally unstable, Thatcher growled, struggling against his restraints. You murdered them. Not me personally, Vanessa shrugged. The Helix Group has existed for decades. Your mother's encryption algorithm was revolutionary, capable of breaking any security system while remaining undetectable. She refused to sell, so they took more direct measures. And now you work for them. Thatcher's voice dripped contempt. I seized an opportunity. The original plan was seduction, marriage, then controlling interest through divorce. Vanessa laughed bitterly. But you discovered my initial data extraction too soon. Plan B took longer, but will be more satisfying. Avalon's mind raced. She needed to create a distraction, free Thatcher, and escape, all while outnumbered and unarmed. The phone in her pocket vibrated with an incoming message from Elaine. Accounts locked down. Police en route. 15 minutes. Too long. Vanessa was already instructing one of the men to prepare a syringe. A cocktail that will ensure your cooperation with the biometrics, then mimic a cardiac event, she explained clinically. Quite untraceable. Avalon scanned the corridor, spotting the fire alarm against the far wall. It would evacuate the hotel, creating chaos, and bring help sooner. As she moved toward it, her foot knocked against a metal bucket, the sound reverberating through the concrete passageway. Inside the room, conversation ceased. Check it, Vanessa ordered, and one guard moved toward the door. Out of time, Avalon smashed the fire alarm, then sprinted down a side passage as klaxons blared and emergency lights flashed. Behind her, she heard shouting and the crash of a door being thrown open. The element of surprise was lost, but she had seconds at most to circle back while the guard pursued the sound of her footsteps. Doubling back through a parallel corridor, she emerged behind the storage room just as the remaining guard stepped out, responding to Vanessa's command to help search. Avalon slipped inside, finding Thatcher still bound and Vanessa fumbling with a case containing syringes. You. Vanessa spat when she saw Avalon, always interfering. It's over, Avalon replied, edging toward Thatcher. The accounts are locked down. Police are coming. Fear flickered across Vanessa's perfect features, quickly replaced by calculation. They won't arrive in time for him. She lunged, syringe in hand, aiming for Thatcher's neck. Avalon intercepted her, grabbing Vanessa's wrist. They struggled, crashing against shelving units. The syringe clattered to the floor as Vanessa landed a vicious blow to Avalon's face. Dazed, Avalon fell back, tasting blood. Vanessa reached for the fallen syringe, her back to Thatcher, who had managed to rock his chair closer to where a broken shelf had created a jagged edge. As Vanessa's fingers closed around the syringe, Thatcher slammed his bound hands against the splintered wood, severing the zip tie. "Avalon!" he shouted, throwing himself forward as Vanessa whirled, syringe raised. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Thatcher tackled Vanessa, the syringe plunging into his shoulder as they crashed to the floor. Vanessa's triumphant laugh died when Avalon grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and brought it down with precise force, rendering the other woman unconscious. "Thatcher!" Avalon knelt beside him, yanking the needle from his arm. "How much did she inject?" "Just a partial dose," he grimaced, breathing labored. "But enough." Above them, the evacuation continued, feet pounding on floors as hotel guests fled the building. Distant sirens grew louder. "We need to get you to paramedics." Avalon helped him stand, his muscular frame leaning heavily against her smaller one. "Wait," he whispered, gripping her shoulders. "If I don't survive this." "Don't," Avalon interrupted fiercely. "You're going to be fine." "Listen," Thatcher's eyes held hers, pupils dilated from whatever drug had entered his system. "I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. When I saw the bracelet, read my mother's note, everything changed. You risked everything to save me, even after what I did to you. Save your strength," Avalon urged, helping him toward the door. "No, I need to say this." His breathing grew more labored, sweat beading on his forehead. "The contract, I never saw you as a possession. I saw someone as alone as I was. Someone who might understand." Tears blurred Avalon's vision as they staggered into the corridor. "I do understand. Now let's get out of here." The next hours passed in a blur of emergency vehicles, police statements, and hospital corridors. By dawn, Thatcher had been stabilized, the toxin identified and countered. Vanessa and her accomplices were in custody, their connections to the Helix Group exposed through files Elaine had discovered in Vanessa's office at Blackwood Enterprises. 1 week later, Avalon stood at the edge of the cliffs behind Blackwood Manor, watching waves crash against the rocks below. The investigation into the deaths of Thatcher's parents had been reopened, evidence from 22 years ago re-examined with modern techniques. Justice long delayed was finally in motion. Footsteps on the path behind her signaled Thatcher's approach. Though still recovering, he moved with his characteristic grace. In his hand was a legal document she recognized, their contract. "I believe this is yours," he said, extending it toward her. Avalon accepted the document, noting the bold, terminated stamp across its face. "So that's it then?" "No," Thatcher's voice softened. "That's the beginning." He reached into his pocket, extracting his mother's bracelet. "This belongs with you now. She would have wanted that." "Thatcher, I can't." "Please," he interrupted gently. "It represents everything I thought lost. Trust, family, hope." His fingers trembled slightly as he secured the bracelet around her wrist. "Just like you." The platinum felt cool against her skin, its weight somehow right. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Whatever we choose," Thatcher replied, his hand finding hers. "For the first time in my life, I'm free, from lies, from the shadow of my parents' deaths, from my own isolation. Because of you. And I'm free from my past," Avalon acknowledged. "No more obligations, no more contracts. Just choices," he agreed, his gaze holding hers. "And I choose you, Avalon Winters. Not as an acquisition or an arrangement, but as my partner. My equal, if you'll have me." The ocean breeze caught her hair as Avalon considered the man before her. No longer the cold, isolated billionaire who had purchased her company, but someone transformed by truth and vulnerability. Someone capable of love. In answer, she rose on tiptoes, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that contained no obligation, no transaction, only the promise of a future freely chosen. As they walked hand in hand back toward the mansion that would now truly be their home, the sapphires in Elizabeth Blackwood's bracelet caught the morning light, sparkling with what Avalon could only imagine was approval from beyond. Some treasures, after all, were beyond price, and the most valuable gifts were those freely given, with open hearts and the courage to believe in second chances.